Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 51 of Can We Talk About Your WordPress Projects? Today, our topic is how project management won the deal. I'm going to review with you a proposal I presented recently that gave me my first five-figure project and how project management aspects of that proposal are actually what won the project for me. If you're watching in the Facebook group and you haven't given StreamYard permission to share your name with me, you can do that at the link at the top beside the live presentation. There's a link to StreamYard where you can give it permission. If you're watching live, it'd be great if you would just give a shout out and let me know you're here and where you're watching from. So, how did project management win the deal? I'm going to share my screen with you. I wanted to take myself out of the picture so you can see this better. And we'll also make it a little bigger if I can. All right, what I do in the very first thing in the proposal is talk about our proposal process. If you've been following me a while, you know I go on and on about the two-step proposal process. It's very important when I'm presenting a proposal that the client understand that process. I mention it several times in the proposal, and I always walk through a proposal. You know, I'm not a fan of dropping off a proposal or sending a link to something like Better Proposals. You can still use those tools, but you really need to do a walkthrough with the client on your proposal. Every proposal deserves a walkthrough. What I do in this first section, and it's very short, it just says one thing, that we pride ourselves on at my company is that we don't try to estimate what we don't know yet. We talk about that we present the proposal as a range, and we use that in our two-step proposal process, which is outlined in detail in our separate master services agreement. I learned that from Nathan Ingram. It works like a charm because you can just focus the proposal on the things that are specific to that client. All the things that stay the same, like your processes, the details of your processes, can be in your master services agreement. I put it there because I'm adamant my clients agree to my processes or I'm not going to do business with them. Let's see. Karen Cleveland says, you say you may have the option to cancel. Yes, because it depends on the result of the more precise estimate. Because if the more precise estimate in the statement of work, which is the second part of our proposal after the deep dive, when we put it all together into a website specification, this is our statement of work, everything we're going to do for the project. If that estimate comes out to be higher than what is in this proposal, then I give the client the option to cancel. If it doesn't, they don't get the option to cancel. We just continue the contract because they've already signed the contract. And that doesn't cost them anything because they already paid me for that first step. With the proposal, I get a deposit that covers all of phase one, which is the deep dive discovery, however long that's going to take. And there's a ton of deliverables that are included, and you'll see as I go through the rest of this proposal. Okay, the next thing I do is I include a project request or snapshot. And I've redacted some stuff from this proposal, so I'm not divulging anything about my client. I shouldn't be. I've taken that out, but basically it's a very short 2-sentence explanation of what the project scope is. This would be the biggest possible picture in this little short section there, and we get more detailed as we go through the proposal. The next section is the background and the business requirements. How did this project come about? Who requested it? What are the overall details of that in the business requirement? In this case, the existing website was created by another agency in 2016. I tell them, and then I reiterate to them what they told me as to what the goal of the website was then. Because it's important, if the goal of the website is changing, you need to spell that out. That's what we did in the business requirements. Although the website is not beautiful, it's dated and a little old looking, but for the purposes of the proposal, we said it was attractive. It functioned well for the purposes they had it for, but now they wanted to add some new functionality. There was something they wanted to improve. There was something else they wanted the website to do. They wanted to make certain organizational changes to their categories, filters, and the structure of the products. This is an e-commerce site. And they wanted to implement a transactional e-commerce solution. If possible, they wanted to integrate this with another system. You can see we are making it very clear. We've gone to now just a little bit more detail You see, we started out with that very large statement, and then we're narrowing down into more detail about what it is they want the site to do. They had some technical issues. They had quite a few plugins out of date. WordPress core was out of date. So we listed what those specific technical concerns were. We had some legal concerns because they didn't have a privacy policy or terms of service. Below that, we listed the details about privacy policies, terms and conditions, and accessibility statements they might want to consider as they consider whether they're going to do anything about these legal concerns. I can't make them do it, but I can give them a really good case for doing it. The next section, we cover the scope. I like to do this in a chart because it gives the client a bird's eye view of everything they need to be involved in. This is a good way to start setting those client expectations that you're not just going to hand this off to me. I'm going to go away, and 3 months later, I'm going to bring you back a website. It is a back and forth all the time thing. I always have 3 columns: what's in scope and my responsibility, what's in scope and your responsibility, the client, and then what's out of scope. If you scroll down, you can see when we get down to things like logo design, photos, videos, and search engine optimization, all of that is out of scope for this project. They actually have a marketing representative that does their search engine optimization. I don't have to worry about that. That's why it's out of scope for this project. Then we get down to the team roles and responsibilities. This is the section that lets them know what is really involved in building a website. By listing all of the roles separately and spelling out in bullet points what that actually entails and putting who it's assigned to over here in the other column. And if you're assigned to every one of those things, and we just used acronyms over here for me and the client, then it shows, wow, that's a lot more than I thought was involved in building a website. We have business analyst, WordPress environment manager, the web designer, the web developer, an SEO analyst, testers, and the trainer. If you're a solopreneur and you're doing websites for people, you are probably filling most of these roles, or else in this case, so you see SEO analyst, I have me and the client. We're just ensuring all content is formatted to take advantage of current search engine optimization algorithms. We do the same thing for ongoing roles and responsibilities. This is a really good way to let the client know you need somebody that's going to be dedicated to taking care of this website, because there's a lot that goes on afterwards too. This particular client, they weren't treating their website like the marketing tool that it is. They have retail stores, and they were more concerned with getting people into the store. And that's kind of what their website was designed to do. But they didn't consider it that first contact with the customer, which they should. By explaining there's people that need to be dedicated to doing this, this was the way I sold the care plan. Okay, I'm just going to check my comments over here. Oh, Karen's asking, why wouldn't they always have the option to cancel? Because we just signed a contract that gave a range of an estimate. We're getting to that section in this proposal. But if they agreed to this, and the range in this case was about a $3,000 to $4,000 difference, if it falls within that range, they're agreeing to my price. They're agreeing to everything in this contract. They don't get to cancel a contract, except I have the disclaimer in there that if my estimate is so off, or we find so many new things that requires it to go over that $3,000 difference, then they have the right to cancel. I hope that answers your question. You can see this is listed out again with the website environment manager, the WordPress environment manager, because that's different than the website environment manager. The content developer and manager, because they've got to have ongoing content. If they got products, somebody's got to write those product descriptions. So that explains all those different roles here. The social media analyst, the marketer, SEO analyst, reviewers, and testers. I had to be determined here because it wasn't particularly clear who was going to do that at the time of the proposal. But what we will do in the statement of work is we will spell out who those specific individuals are at the client that will be handling these things. You see, we've got ourselves listed as the website environment manager and the WordPress environment manager because we require e-commerce clients to host with us to be on a care plan. That's why I had already put my name next to those. Okay. This is where we get to the project management approach. And especially when you're dealing with a website redesign or a client who has maybe been burned before by another one, this is where you get to set yourself apart. Okay. Is you talk about your project management approach. First of all, we talk about productivity management. And if you have been following me or you're a member of the Academy, you know we base everything on the 6 productivity principles for WordPress project success. I won't go into those, but it's define the job in detail, get the right resources involved, define your acceptance criteria up front. Those are our principles. Then the processes that support those principles start off with risk management. This is something a lot of WordPress practitioners leave out. There is risk in every project. What is the risk to getting it done on time and within budget? That needs to be spelled out. We have a risk management process where we identify those risks at the beginning of the project and any risks that come up during the project, and we mitigate those risks. We make sure we address them. And we'll get to that a little bit. What we do here, though, is we give a very brief statement of what we do in these different processes, and all the detail is in the master services agreement, which is a much bigger, thicker document that goes along with this. But we don't necessarily walk through all of that in the proposal walkthrough. In this case, I did. We walked through the proposal and then we walked through the master services agreement. It just depends on the client. You could leave the master services agreement with them, but both of those documents need to be signed and a deposit needs to be given at the same time for the project to begin. When we get to the end of this, I'm going to reiterate what Mike Killen said. I posted it in the Facebook group. The easiest way to close a sale. That worked in this case. Well, it didn't quite work because they wanted references before they would agree, but they had pretty much agreed verbally. They wanted to get my references first. We talk about risk management and we talk about change management. This is a big one. We're going to talk about the change budget later. So it's really important you cover what is your change management process. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly what I say it should be, but mine works. You need to spell out, how are you going to manage change? How are you going to handle it? The fact that we had a change control process is something the client was very impressed with. Acceptance management. We define the acceptance for the deliverables before we even create them. So if the deliverable has these things, boom, 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 then you will accept it. If they agree to that, then we move ahead and create the deliverable. And we say that, acceptance of deliverables on a timely basis is critical in order to meeting our timeline and meeting the budget. Then we go into required management resources. This was particularly important with this client because you have the owner of the company who has grown this thing for 50 years. It's a woman-owned company in a very male-dominated arena. She's got these people that work for her, but oftentimes they say, well, it's her decision, it's her decision, it's her decision. So it's very important to spell these things out. The people I identified here turned out not to be the ultimate resource. As of this week, I am dealing directly with the owner of the company on these early decisions that have to be made. But the project sponsor is typically the person at the client who is in charge. In this case, we have a marketing person who is external to the company, but very involved with their marketing and their website. So she is involved as well. I listed myself as the project manager, and then who's going to be that content manager? Who's going to keep up with the content ongoing and responsible for making sure I get the content I need with whatever the products are. Then we come to our proposed solution and deliverables. I listed these as recommendations. These are the things I think they need to take care of right away. First of all, they had some urgent technical and security issues we needed to take care of. I listed what those were and what would be required to carry out that recommendation. We said we needed to perform a complete analysis of the current website infrastructure and related business processes, because anytime you're dealing with e-commerce, with people who haven't been doing it and now they're going to be doing e-commerce, their internal business processes are going to need to change in terms of the way they handle things in the retail store. And so it was very important we do an analysis of what the current process is and then propose what we believe the future process should be and get approved before we start building anything into the website. The third thing was to move the website to our e-commerce optimized solution. They were having some issues with things not getting updated with their previous provider. They were very happy to sign on to this care plan. I'll tell you a funny thing at the end. They told me after they accepted this proposal too, which kind of made me feel like I might have left some money on the table. But anyway, then we get to the deliverables section and we spell this out. You'll see the first bullet point is the current website and business process analysis report and recommendation. This is not a normal part of what I teach inside the academy in terms of what the deliverables should be, but it was necessary for this client. That brings the point. What I teach you inside the academy and what I teach with our methodology, it's designed to give you a framework. It's designed to give you the basics of what you need in terms of setting up different processes and learning to manage your projects using those processes. But it's designed to be tailored to either your niche or the way you do business or specifics of the project. Ben Bradley's asking, is the project sponsor also the decision maker? Usually. In this case, I thought it was, but once we got started with the project, I realized that even though I asked that question very directly, you have decision-making capability. You have the ability to write a check, right? And they said yes, but then when it came down to the finer questions about what do we do about this particular type of product and the category it's in, it doesn't seem like it's in the right category. I think it should be in this other category. And they go, oh, well, that's her decision. That's her decision. Once we got into that little mode, we scheduled a meeting. We went over those things, and now I am communicating directly with her. The next one is detailing what the statement of work is. That statement of work is what we pull together at the end of the deep dive discovery. It includes many things. The visual sitemap, what the current sitemap is and what the future sitemap is going to look like. The product and the content requirements. Normally that says content requirements, unless it's e-commerce, you've got to add in what are the product requirements. We're still working all that out. We're still in the deep dive phase, as a matter of fact. You have your functional requirements. What is the website going to physically do? Your technical requirements. Then we do style and branding. For this website, they weren't really looking to update the style and branding, but they really needed to. This was something I got semi-approved early on, that we would change the homepage and the website. The pictures they're using are way too spread out and pixelated, and they're using a lot of text built into a graphic. I explained to them why that is not the preferred way of doing things anymore. It was important we update those. Also, the project plan will be in that statement of work. But notice in this red box, I mention again, the statement of work also includes a more precise estimate of the time and cost based on what may have been changed, added to, or removed from the scope of work during the phase 1 deep dive discovery. People are sometimes afraid to repeat themselves, but when it's a process that's super important, your client pay really close attention to, it doesn't matter how many times you mention it. In fact, repetition is a good thing because it will stick with them later. Then we talk about the other deliverables, which is the staging environment, the updated website, the training materials we're going to create for them. This is what really sent them over the moon, was the fact I'm going to do a project notebook for them. I keep a project notebook anyway. I make copies of the things that are in the project notebook to make sure the client has that. So they're going to have three things at the end of this project that documents the project. They're going to have a statement of work, which is the detailed website specification. So if something bad happens to me or I'm just become unavailable, I decide I'm not ever doing another website or I'm not going to support anybody anymore, or they want to get updates done by somebody else, they have the absolute positive detail of what the website was designed during this iteration to do. And then the project notebook, which is all of the signed acceptance forms, all the change requests, the issues log, the risk register. So if there's ever any question about what happened during this project, they can go back and look at that. What we use the project notebook for is for continuous improvement. This is where we go back and we look at our risk register, we look at our issues log, we look at our change requests that came through, and we try to figure out what did we do wrong and what did we do right. It's not just what you did wrong, it's what you did wrong and what you did right, and turn those things into best practices. That's called continuous improvement. If we're going to keep the project notebook for ourselves anyway, we might as well provide the client with with a value add deliverable. They love this idea, as well as the website owner's handbook, which is kind of an iteration of the website owner's manual that Kyle Van Dusen put together. I've modified it slightly, and I call it the website owner's handbook. And that is a quick reference of all the details of their website, all of the things like the URL, the website address, the login, domain registrar, email provider, the content delivery network, all of that technical stuff. So they've got a list very handy that if they ever have to go back to, it's right there at hand. We go into a little bit of detail about project acceptance, because it's important for them to know the difference between acceptance and approval and when their payment is due. The project will be deemed accepted and the final payment is due when all the deliverables have been accepted, the website's been tested by us and passed all tests, and the website's been tested by the client per the test plans we gave them to go through. At that point, the money's due and the project is accepted. So this is our acceptance criteria for the entire project. Now, each deliverable also has acceptance criteria. There's a difference between it being accepted and complete. It'll be complete when the website's been moved to the live environment and passed final testing and is accessible by anyone visiting the URL for the site. Complete means I don't move the live site until I've gotten that check. So it can be accepted, but until I get the check, I'm not moving it to live. So the project's not complete. I hope that makes sense. Then we get to the time and cost estimate section. Here we reiterate again, this estimate is listed as a range, and it depends on the further details that will be discovered during the statement of work during phase one, and that they can refer to the master services agreement for a detailed description of each phase. But what we've done here is we've given them an estimated timeline in a number of weeks. Then we've given them an estimate for each of the different phases in a range in terms of the cost. A lot of times we'll do that with the weeks as well. For this particular client, the estimated timeline has gone out the window because this got a lot more complicated than they originally said it was. We found a lot of things that have to be straightened out first. I will tell you that I don't even suspect it, I know it. When we do the statement of work, the estimate's going to come in way higher than what they originally agreed to. I'm also very confident they will continue on with the project because they're very excited about it and they enjoy working with me, which is very satisfying, as a matter of fact. But here I do list out bullet points about what is included in each one of these phases. What are they going to get during the discovery phase? What are we going to do? What are we going to do during design and preparation? What are we going to do during development and testing? And what are we going to do during training and deployment? So we give that estimate for each one of those phases in a range as shown here. And then right behind that, we give an estimated change budget. In the proposal, we just give them a blurb about the change control process. The detail is in the master services agreement, but we did describe it to them in detail and we did mention the change budget. By the time we get to the estimated change budget, they know what the change budget is. This is not a surprise to them because we talked about it earlier in the walkthrough and we explained why we do it that way. It protects the client and it protects us because then they don't spend any money they don't really want to spend. And each change is estimated as to how's it going to affect the timeline and how is it going to affect the budget. The thing is, though, the change control process doesn't start being implemented until after the deep dive discovery, because that's when the line is drawn in the sand. Well, I should say that a different way. Each deliverable, once it is accepted, which is my word for approved, once it's accepted, any change to that particular deliverable, then that does invoke the change request process. So for example, if we had nailed down the sitemap and we said, here are all the pages and here's how they're going to be laid out on the website, then later on they decided they needed extra pages, then we would need to make a change to that visual sitemap. That might not take but 5 minutes and I might not even charge them anything for it, but we're still going to do that change control process so we can see we had to go back and change the sitemap because of these newly discovered pages. And why was that? Because later we're going to come back and look and try to figure out, is there a way we can circumvent that from happening the next time? That's super important. So then we talk about the change control process as detailed in the MSA, that these funds are only used when changes to previously approved deliverables are also approved by you. The client has control of that change budget. And it's just invisible money. You don't get any deposit based on that change budget. It's just set aside as call it a rainy day fund, right? Or your Christmas club account at the bank. Do they even have those anymore? I'm not sure. Where you're just setting aside money. It's invisible money you don't touch unless the circumstance comes up where you've got to do change. And then we'll move that money from the change budget into the regular budget. Ben says, oh, I'm just going to put that on the screen. That quality you're bringing to their business is priceless with them having to update their business processes. Exactly. You know, so many times we get in there and with a client and we're just going to build their website. But the website is just a cog in a wheel, a big set of wheels in terms of their marketing. It's not the only thing. We think it's the be all and end all, but those processes, especially if it's a transactional website in any way, those business processes are super important too. And if you have the ability to help them with that, you can charge more for your services. Then we gave them the project total. We put in parentheses, that does not include change. So if there aren't any changes, this is what we expect it to be based on what we know right now. I kept reiterating that as we walked through it. I say again, because we intentionally do not estimate what we do not know, the estimate is a range and be refined. I spell it out another time because you just can't say it enough. And then I tell them exactly that at the end of phase one, they're going to get detailed website specification. And if they choose not to continue because the next estimate is too high, they can take it and go do whatever they want to with it, get somebody else to build a website. We talk about ongoing services. This is where we sell our care plan, about the website management services we offer. I give a brief description, but then I link back to my website where I've got the detailed description of all the different plans. And this is where we talk about project risk. Remember, I said most WordPress people don't do this, but it's so important because there's two elements of project risk that are a risk on every single project. Even just calling this out to the client and pointing it out to them and then saying, here's what we're going to do to mitigate that risk, sends them over the moon. They get so excited about that because they realize you're actually evaluating anything that could go wrong and trying to either mitigate that risk or have processes in place that keep those things from happening. Karen is asking the question, how often do you invoice for changes? It depends on the client. Here's how it works. Somebody identifies there needs to be a change. It might be me, it might be the client. They identify there needs to be a change. So we fill out the change request form. I estimate whatever impact there's going to be to the timeline or the cost or both. Because even if it doesn't affect the cost, you still need to do the change request and you still need to document the change. Even if the answer is it has no impact on the timeline, it has no impact on the cost, we made this change because blah, 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 blah. Because again, this is your record of why you change things. And trust me, you will not remember. You think you will, but you will not. Years from now, or even months from now, you will not remember that. So depending on the client, if I've worked with the client before, I know payment's not going to be a problem. I will probably wait till the end of the project, depending on how big the change is. If it's for a whole bunch of money, or if I don't trust that the client might not pay me at the end, then I will invoice for it. Before we even start working on the change, I will invoice and make sure they pay before we start working on whatever that change is. They have to pay pretty quickly so we can get that change into the queue and make sure it doesn't affect the timeline. The two risks that are always on every project is the first one is client availability. I just say here exactly what the deal is. We recognize you have a business to run. They might not be available when we need them to be available. Even if we have an agreed upon project plan and they know they have to do something on a certain day, their pipes might burst at their retail location. That's going to have to take priority. In this case, because my client is a furniture store and the international furniture market happens the first part of June, that has an impact on their availability, has an impact on our project. It's important that you spell that out. Then we list what those mitigations are, what we're going to do to try to make sure that that doesn't happen. We can only make our best effort. There's also resource availability. One of the plugins I was planning to use has been ripped from the repository. What am I going to do now? I could probably find another one, but it's going to take some time. So That's what I say here. To mitigate this risk, we will invoke our change control process to adjust the timeline or cost when a change in resource impacts the project plan. What if the head of their merchandising department, which I really need to have access to, what if she decides to quit and they've got to train somebody new? That's going to have an impact on our project. In this case, those were the only two risks I spelled out. I should have spelled out the risk about we don't have the proper decision maker identified, but we do now. So you can always go back and change things if it's not working out because the person that they told you was the decision maker has got to keep going back to somebody else and it's slowing the project down. All you have to do is tell them that, this is really getting in the way of us going forward. It would be better if I could just speak directly to whoever that person is. And that's what I did. And that's what they said. They said it. So she's super busy, but she is dedicated to getting this project done. I have some frequently asked questions. Yours might be different. These are pretty much the same for every client. And sometimes it will vary when I talk about who do I call if the website breaks, depending on what their care plan. I might answer that question differently in the proposal, but this is pretty much boilerplate language for me. I'm getting down here to next steps. What I should have done, and what I did do is what Michael Killen says in The Way to Close a Sale is we can start today. All I need is a check. All I need is for you to sign this document and a check, and we can start today. That's what I told them, but they weren't ready because they wanted to get references. I didn't have any immediately available because I had not asked my previous clients for those, but I got them, sent them over. The very next day they signed and sent me the check. Then they said this to me, well, Beth, it was never really about the money. Dang, wish I'd known that. Did the proposal because I was so nervous because they had talked about the previous guys that had helped them, that had built this website for them, that it had been pricey and they weren't happy. They were fine with the website, but they weren't happy with the way the project had been managed. By spelling all this out for them and getting the references they wanted, that's what sold the project, was the project management piece of what I did. Had I known that, I would have priced it quite a bit higher. I would have put some more margin in there if I could have, but I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm going to move you guys back over here so I can look at the camera. Hopefully this was helpful to you. There is an annotated version of that proposal in the Project Management 101 roadmap inside the membership to the Academy. If you haven't joined and you like that proposal and you want to use something similar, it's in there. Now in the premium program, there is a lot more detail in that template for you. I'm in the process of updating that to show how I do the statement of work separately from the proposal. Hey, thank you, Rob. Rob says it's good stuff. Yeah, I left money on the table, Ben. It breaks my heart. I feel like I did. But this was my first 5-figure project. I felt like I was doing really well. It's going to end up being more anyway. So in the end, it's going to be fine. And see, that's the other thing that deep dive discovery phase at the beginning does for you. It allows you to not get caught into that, I left money on the table. This is a lot harder than I thought it was going to be, or this is a lot more complicated than I thought it was going to be. This is how we're going to get paid more for this project because we've discovered a lot of things we didn't know we were going to have to do. I knew I was going to help them with process. I didn't know I was going to help them with data cleanup. Once I figured that out, I was like, yeah, this is going to be a lot more expensive. So is the MSA in the Academy? It will be. It's not in the free program. It's a very abbreviated version though, because it is actually Nathan Ingram's master services agreement. He uses under monster contracts. He does charge for that. So I don't want to give away his detail. But if you want to go over and look at what he has on offer, it's a super deal. We'll give you his version of the master services agreement. It's got all the legalese in it and all the gotchas that Nathan has worked into his proposals and contracts over 25 plus years of doing this. Every time something would go wrong, he'd add another section to his contract. It got so big that it isn't workable as just one document. That's why he has now separated the two. I thought it was a brilliant method of doing things. If you're watching this and you haven't joined the Academy, you can join the free program, see if it's right for you. If you need more detail, you want more done for you templates, guidelines, downloads, as well as instruction from people like Mike Killen, one of my favorite people, and other industry experts. That's all in the premium version. The discounted rate is still available for the premium version because I haven't finished the level 2 project manager certification yet. And that's what's cool about the free program. If you go through all of the lessons and take all of the quizzes, you qualify to take the level 1 certified WP project managers exam. There's a small nominal fee for that. Once you pass that, you get a certificate and you get a badge to put on your website. It sets you apart from the competition. It says you know how to get projects done on time within budget. Doesn't promise you will do it, but it does promise that you know how to do it if you've gone through all that training. Okay, guys, on Friday, we're going to carry on this discussion and talk about how you might are using elements of project management to win the deal, or if anyone has any questions about ways they could incorporate this into their process. Hell, use project management as a leverage to set yourself apart from the competition. Because I promise you, the guy down the street's not doing this. And I know the guy on Fiverr is not doing it. It really makes you look so much more professional because you have examined all the things that could go wrong. You're already laying that out for the client. You're saying, look, we already know these things could happen. And here's what we're going to do to keep them from happening. Every Friday at 11 o'clock, we have our Friday chat inside the Facebook group. If you're not inside the Facebook group and you're watching on the public page and you would like to join our group, search on WordPress project management groups and we'll come up. We do ask a few questions as entry questions, but that's just to keep the riffraff out. We don't judge you. We don't make an assessment of where you are in this whole process. It's just answer the question. All right, guys, I hope you got some value out of this, and I hope to see you all on Friday. Thank you for your patience in me not being able to do our live on Monday as scheduled. Until I see you next time, remember to stay productive, stay strong, and never stop learning. See you soon.